Season 2 of Avatar the Last Airbender is a pivotal season in the series that fleshes out not only Aang and his friends, but the lore, his enemies, and the world as a whole. It adds extremely important elements to the story like the addition of Toph and Azula, Wan Shi Tongs Library and the reveal of the eclipse, a deeper insight on the function of the Avatar state, and the city of Ba Sing Se. It has memorable moments like Aang losing Appa, Zuko beginning to change, and Iroh singing Leaves from the Vine. Now, what if we took all of those great moments, things that expanded and enriched this world into becoming one of the best pieces of media, and we just ripped the heart and soul out of it, boiled it down to the barest minimum, rearranged the story to shoehorn in unnecessary nonsense, and shoved all of that slop into a 7-episode season with hour-long episodes? That is Season 2 of Netflix's adaptation of Avatar the Last Airbender. I'm Tom the Wizard Man, and this is the Fake Wizards review of Avatar the Last Airbender Season 2. If this video provides you any value at all, please like and subscribe, as we're making many reviews every single day. We're doing this beardless. Season 2 of the live-action adaptation of Avatar continues the adventures of Aang, Katara, Sokka, Momo, and Appa as the gang seeks to embolden the fight against the tightening grip of the Fire Nation. In this season, Aang seeks an earthbending master to help in his quest of mastering the elements. As in the prologue, it is established that he's become proficient in waterbending with the help of Katara. Additionally, the group seeks an audience with the Earth King of Ba Sing Se in hopes of being able to recruit him in the Earth Kingdom's army against the war with the Fire Nation. However, they have to evade not only Zuko, but his conniving sister Azula and the secret police of the Earth Kingdom, the Dai Li. Now, at a surface level, the live action and the animated series basically do the same things this season. They include the same set pieces of Serpent's Pass, Wan Shi Tongs Library, and Ba Sing Se. However, the live action's adaptation feels more like mimicry without an actual understanding of what made the original work or why events played out the way they did. Season 2 rearranges the events of the original in ways that don't necessarily even make sense, and all it does is just enforce how the animated series is the vastly superior version. First, let's look at some of the characters. Season 2 is a big deal as we begin to see how this journey has changed the characters that were introduced in Season 1. These changes aren't exclusively positive or negative, and they vary between how the characters perceive the world, their nation, or even themselves. Starting with Aang, our optimistic protagonist. Aang is a 12-year-old kid who bears the responsibility of stopping the Fire Nation, the dominating military force, and the empire responsible for the eradication of his people as a whole. Resting upon his shoulder is not only the weight and regret of having ran from his responsibility, but now he must bring peace to a world that has primarily fallen into despair. A harrowing and daunting task for an adult, let alone a child, yet despite that, Aang does his best to try and solve the issues of this world with a sense of optimism and hope. Sometimes it stems from naivety, but it's almost always out of his desire to do good, to be helpful, to be the Avatar. Amongst all the different protagonists, Aang is a character that you are constantly rooting for to succeed. He's the underdog. He's a literal kid, but he's so full of hope that you don't want to see him lose. He's a character an audience member can look at while watching and say, if he can overcome these insurmountable challenges as a kid, so can I. In Season 2, Aang's path challenges that optimism and hope in deeper cuts than the first season, by introducing more things for him to be fearful of and personal tragedies that he has to try and manage. In the first episode of the animated second season, General Fong forces Aang to use the Avatar state, in hopes of using it as a weapon against the Fire Nation. However, to get Aang to activate it, the General places his friends in danger. This leads to Aang's transformation being one of strong emotions, where he has no control over it, leading him to destroy the entire training ground. During this moment, he learns from Roku what the Avatar state is, but also how if he dies in the Avatar state, it will in turn end the Avatar cycle permanently. Waking up to the destruction that lay before him in his unconscious state, and with the knowledge that the Avatar state can result in the death of the Avatar as a whole, Aang tries to avoid its use throughout the entire season. This literally being the first episode immediately sets the stage for the rest of the season. Aang is going out of his way not to use the Avatar state in combat out of the fear of its destructive capabilities and the possible threat it poses to the Avatar lineage. He wasn't able to summon the ability at this point, and anytime he had used it previously, he wasn't in control of it, but it adds weight to the combat encounters of this second season, as Aang is consciously trying to prevent himself from using the Avatar state in any fight. This means he can't just use it as a trump card to win his battles like many characters want him to, but more so, it reinforces how impactful the moments are that he does end up using it in this season. Furthermore, when he gets struck by lightning by Azula whilst in the Avatar state in the finale, it rounds out that thread of how vulnerable he truly is which was introduced at the top of the season. What does the live action series do with this? Well, there's no scene with General Thong at the top of the season to force him to use the Avatar state. Instead, his fear of using the Avatar state comes as a result of the end of Season 1, when he allowed the Ocean Spirit to use him in retaliation of the Fire Nation during the Siege of the North Pole. Aang doesn't find out about the stipulation of the Avatar state until he's in Wan Shi Tongs Library in episode 5 of 7. In the library, Avatar Yang Chen just shows up to explain how the Avatar state works. But the way that she frames it is counterintuitive to the animated series. She prefaces that there will always be another Avatar unless you die in the Avatar state, which will result in this cycle ceasing to exist. Aang is shaken by this information and goes, well, I can't control the Avatar state anyway, so it's okay. But then Yang Chen goes, well, you'll be able to control it better with the mastery of the elements to the point where you can be precise with it. You're stronger than you think. So I can use it against the Fire Nation? Hey, use it wisely. Don't die out there. Then in episode 7, he's able to use the Avatar state where he's in control of it, but then loses to Azula. In the animated series, this was a setup and payoff that was ingrained into the entire season, starting from the first episode and concluding in the finale. Even in the finale, after Aang's meeting with Guru Patik, where he learns to open his chakras to access the Avatar state, Aang is still hesitant in using it, only doing so because there was no perceivable escape from the combined might of Zuko, Azula, and the Dai Li agents. It's that desperation that Azula then takes advantage of, hitting him in the back with lightning as he was about to face down the Dai Li agents. The live action feels like they included it because it was on a checklist. It's included, but it doesn't carry the same weight and payoff that the original took the time to carefully build over the season's run. Aang's scared of the Avatar state? We'll make it a tie-in from last season. He doesn't have the scene with Roku to educate him on the Avatar state? We'll just shoehorn it into Wan Shi Tongs Library, have Yang Chen show up. Azula is supposed to tactically snipe him out of the Avatar state in a scene that reinforces how this character is a connivingly smart and dangerous character? Nah, that's too big-brained. Instead, we'll introduce the idea about how he doesn't want to take anyone's life in a scene where it doesn't make any sense. And sincerely, it doesn't make any sense. Aang is supposed to be in control of the Avatar state in this scene, where he could have just earthbended the area to trap her as she was defeated. It's clear they wanted this to be a precursor for when he has to fight Ozai, but the fight with Ozai is a completely different situation. When Aang had to fight Ozai, it was during Sozin's Comet, where he would be his most powerful. All of the characters persuading Aang into taking Ozai's life was because he'd be too powerful to lock up. If Aang didn't permanently take him off the field, Ozai would have had the potential to continue his path in destroying the Earth Kingdom. Azula was not in that situation in this season. He would have been able to restrain her. So changing it to that he hesitates and in that moment she lightning bends him is genuinely a dumb decision. The other key moment and arc for Aang in this season is losing Appa. Throughout the entire series, Aang has always had Appa by his side. He's his best friend, the one to accompany him in the ice for 100 years, and the last living thing that Aang has to connect to his old life with the air nomads. Losing him plays a massive role as the character who's filled with hope and optimism has to go through an arc of dealing with the feelings of anger, sadness, and doubt while still trying to focus on the mission of saving the world as, again, a 12-year-old boy. In the animated season, during the halfway point of the season, the gang sets out to find Wan Shi Tongs Library, and during their time within it, sandbenders kidnap Appa. In the next episode, the gang is able to find the individuals responsible, but are too late to save him, as he's already been traded off and is en route to Ba Sing Se to be sold. It's at this moment that Aang, in a flurry of rage, changes into the Avatar state. His power swells around him, kicking up a sandstorm as Sokka tells the sandbenders to run. The only thing that stops him is Katara grabbing onto him and consoling him. And as the wind peters out and the light of the Avatar state starts to fade, the Avatar, the bridge between worlds, turns back into Aang, a 12-year-old kid crying in his friend's arm after losing his closest friend. It's a raw scene that hits you in the feels, yes, but it carries into the rest of the season, where we don't see them reunited until 7 episodes later. And even though he has moments where he lashes out at his friends, or is distracted by how much he misses him, he still journeys forward into trying and help and do the right thing. Live action botched this by having it also be the 5th of the 7th episode in the series. There's no sandbenders to confront as the gateway to Wan Shi Tongs Library is actually in Ba Sing Se, so the Dai Li agents steal Appa off-rip instead of capturing him as Appa was trying to get to Aang. When the gang escapes the library and discover that Appa is missing, Aang yells out for him as his tattoo and eyes begin to glow, and it cuts to credits. The closest scene we get to Aang confronting the Sandbenders in this season is in the Earth King's garden, where he accuses Long Feng of stealing Appa after Long Feng had just exposed the other members of the team for engaging in secret or illegal activity. He taps into the Avatar state and begins to hover like in the animated series, but is almost immediately brought out of it by Katara. Then Long Feng and the Earth King are just like, alright, you should just go home now. The problem with the execution of this in live action isn't the sequencing or the removal of the Sandbenders. It's how Aang is portrayed in this. In the animated series, Aang is a child, and he acts like it. A lot of the goofy moments of the series is him messing around because he's a kid. For the live action, he's still supposed to be a kid, but he's written as if he's this serious, moody teenager. The performance is this weird mixture of a teenager playing a child character that was written to act and emote like an adult. I can't pin the issue solely on the performance, as the script and direction is at odds with the story itself. And Aang isn't the only character that suffers from this disconnect of story, script, and performance. Look at Zuko. Season 2 is a huge deal for Zuko's story as it builds on the foundation that was lightly hinted at in Season 1 in preparation for his redemption in Season 3. Zuko, being considered a traitor to the Fire Nation, is forced to pretend to be another person as he and Iroh make their way through the Earth Kingdom. It's on that journey where he's able to see the world through completely new eyes, encountering individuals who were harmed by the Fire Nation, yet still show him compassion and kindness, despite themselves not being in the most stable positions. It challenges his preconceptions of the world and makes him question what is really right and wrong. I will give credit that the live action does a decent job at portraying these scenes, but the portrayal of both Zuko and Iroh result in a less compelling and satisfying rendition of these scenes. In the animated series, Zuko is this hot-headed, stubborn teenager who for most of his life has been led astray. In Season 1, he is a villain, but they establish that he isn't one out of sheer malice. He's a villain from a mixture of ignorance, arrogance, and being taught the wrong things. He may be 4 years older than Aang, but in reality, he too is just a kid. So much of his redemption arc is predicated on him being juvenile in Season 1 and 2 because Season 3 is where that trauma-riddled teen overcomes his family nature and grows to not only be a hero, but a better person to lead as the new Fire Lord. Where the animated series nails that teenager wrapped in emotional turmoil who's constantly making the wrong decision, live-action Zuko comes off too much like an adult, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the result of the disconnect between character, script, and performance. It's most apparent with the interactions between Zuko and Iroh in the live action. Like, originally, you're watching a 16-year-old kid thinking he knows better than his goofy but wise uncle, only to be proven wrong from trial and error. In this, it's a 20-year-old who just berates his adopted father. In the original, Zuko makes mistakes. He's short-sighted in his decision, and towards the end of the season, Iroh confronts him about it. Under Lake Laogai, Zuko is prepared to release Appa, but right before he does, Iroh appears and calls him out for not thinking this out, and just improvising as he goes along, comparing how he's done this before with it almost costing him his life in the North Pole. It's in this exchange that Iroh fully tells him to look inward and ask himself, who are you and what do you want? This exchange is extremely important to Zuko's redemption arc, as this is one of the major catalyst points in making Zuko truly question what he's doing, so that when he ends up making the wrong decision and going against his uncle during this finale, his confusion on what's right and wrong is more grounded in the third season. The live action doesn't really have a scene where Iroh confronts Zuko. Instead, what happens is during their time in the Earth Kingdom, Zuko blames everything on Iroh, that if he didn't allow Ozai to rise to power, they wouldn't be in this situation they are now, and he storms out. This scene isn't the problem. It works under the context of a teenager lashing out at a parental figure, shoving the blame off of themselves and onto someone else. It's dampened by it not feeling like a teenager, but it could work. No, the problem ends up becoming the resolution to this scene. In Ba Sing Se, Iroh takes a moment to speak to Zuko, where Iroh apologizes. And not a, hey, I'm sorry how things have turned out. No, a full-on, you were 100% right, I'm sorry. He then continues to apologize for trying to raise Zuko to be the man that he hoped Lu Ten, his dead son, would be, and finishes it off with the sentiment of, choose the person you want to be yourself, and I will love you regardless. This scene, and Season 2 as a whole, is blatant character assassination of Uncle Iroh. You want to have the character apologize for letting the Fire Nation get as bad as it is because Iroh is in mourning? Sure. But the idea of Iroh apologizing for trying to raise Zuko into being a good man is actually stupid. Here's the character that has been a positive role model and supporter to a kid who's been abused for almost his entire life. You're gonna apologize to him for trying to prevent him from walking down the path of his abusive family? And the switch from who are you into, well, choose who you want to be is infuriating. In the original, Iroh is asking for him to choose with the clear insinuation that there is a right and wrong choice. With him asking, is it your own destiny, or is it a destiny someone else has tried to force on you? The live action being, make your own choice, I'll love you regardless of what you choose, completely removes the good and bad aspect to it. You know what it honestly feels like? It feels like the creators went, well, Iroh yelling at Zuko is abusive coded behavior, so we changed it to Iroh apologizing to Zuko instead. That's what a father should do. You know, if my father wasn't critical about my life choices and only validated me, I'd still talk to him. Maybe I'm wrong. But this scene to me came across as an insert for someone's self-gratuitous delusion on what they wish their parents were like. A whole video essay can be made on how this adaptation doesn't understand how to use Iroh, or why this character worked in the original series. But for the sake of this review not being an hour long, we'll save it for another time. An adaptation doesn't mean it'll be a one-to-one. But if you were gonna make a more mature adaptation, a more in-depth version, can you give the audience a teensiest bit of respect that they're not blumbering morons? Where the original series was enriched in nuance and subtle plot threads planted in the first and second seasons that grew and flourished in the third, this doesn't have any of that. The literal children's cartoon does a better job using nuance and subtext than you do, you hacks. The dialogue is the most on-the-nose, beat-for-beat explanation of what's happening all the time, which completely ruins characters like Azula. Season 2 was originally Azula's introduction, and she's this manipulative, conniving character whose malice is only challenged by her father's. Over the course of the season, her plans are thwarted, but the moves that she makes leads her to ultimately come out at the end of this season as the victor. She was a character that you knew had cards in their hand, but you could only guess what her plays with them were going to be. The live action robs the character of that level of mystery and suspense by constantly cutting back to her so she can exposition dump about what she was thinking or feeling or how she's just the best. Characters need to make it crystal clear what their intentions are at all times because they don't trust you as a viewer to be able to understand what's going on. You know what it ends up making this show? Boring. Instead of it being an interesting show with some inconsistencies compared to the original, it's a 7-hour slog of watching Netflix butcher a thing that you love. Almost all of the issues that I listed could have been fixed with better scripting, better dialogue, or just taking more time with the characters. And where someone may try to defend, be like, oh, well, technically, Netflix had less of a runtime. They shoehorned in dumb nonsense that they could have cut out. You could have made room for more of these moments. Here's a list of the shoehorn nonsense and other dumb things that they decided to include. Having the refugees from Amashu travel with the Avatar all the way to Ba Sing Se. Unprompted, remember the siege of Ba Sing Se to make Iroh sad scene. Azula's interest in overthrowing her father. The Beifongs profiting off of wartime by selling parts to the Fire Nation military. Katara becoming the Painted Lady and acting like a vigilante. Jet leading a hate mob to attack Fire Nation refugees. General Sung being changed from the guy who mans the outer wall into a character to be a foil to Long Feng. Toph having family issues that lead to a solo faux heart-to-heart with her mom, where she's drugged instead of being captured by the Earthbenders. The entrance to Wan Shi Tongs Library is in Ba Sing Se, and is something they spirit walk through instead of it being a physical location. If they're spirits and they can't bend, how can Toph see? How did the professor give the scroll to Wan Shi Tong? How did they take Kyoshi's book out of the library? Avatar Kyoshi and Yang Chen are in the library for some reason. The off-screen killing of freedom fighters to justify Jet's selfishness. Sokka doesn't discover the eclipse to fight the firebenders. Toph discovers it because Kyoshi gives it to her in her book, where she just so happened to keep all of that information. The librarian rats out the gang and then gets eaten by Wan Shi Tong. Jet's heroic sacrifice is prefaced by him saying, "Kill them all." Yeah, that's very heroic. Toph having trouble keeping the building up was because she was in sand originally and had a hard time bending as a result of it. Now it's just that she had a hard time keeping the gate up. Katara gives a kindergarten level plant analogy to convince the king to be engaged in politics, and it works. Iroh joins the White Lotus after apologizing to a man who basically says, yeah, I was the leader of the battalion that your son was in. What are you gonna do about it? And there's definitely more. This was just the ones that stuck out to me. It's a damn shame because there are moments in this season and in the first season where the actors actually feel like the characters they're playing. I like Sokka in this. I didn't have that much of a problem with Toph. Honestly, I kind of liked Long Feng a little bit better in this than I did in the original series. The elements were present to make a good adaptation. It's just the creators didn't have the skill to bend them. Do not bother watching this show. Don't invest time into it. This show was created not with the intention of bringing this beloved story to a wider audience, but was made to try and cash in the hype the series garnered back in 2020. Unfortunately, that wave of hype has died out. And all this adaptation does is further bury the franchise into mediocrity and forgettability. I give it a 2 out of 10. Don't watch it. If this review provided you any value at all, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.